Ciao a tutti e bentornati al mio video. È ora di guardare le carte degli uomini. I'm sorry, you'll have to excuse me. I had a piece of prosciutto stuck in my throat. Anyway, welcome back. We're here to rock and roll. It's raining men. Men faction, that is. As we're going to proceed now to the Canton Fields Brigade cards and take a look at what the men have going on now that we have revised and completed their set. Okay, so you'll see here these totals like we were talking about before. This is showing the total combat, the total cunning for all the cards in their faction group. This is the total amount of these two values, and this is the total cost of all the cards. Here you see the total VP and how much of that VP is via the captains. Okay, now this allowed for me to do a comparative analysis of all the groups and kind of make sure that they're all balanced even though they're not all the same. So you see the men have an exact balance here between combat and cunning in their cards. And we wanted the men to be balanced. The dwarves are going to be a little bit more combat focused. The elves are going to be a little bit more cunning focused. Okay, and then we'll see that throughout as the Concord are balanced. The Xanth have more cunning than combat, and that spread is just a little bit wider than it was in the Champions faction. And the Blood Orcs have more combat than cunning, and again that spread is a little bit wider. So we have a little bit more intensity with the Orcs, let's say, just ever so slightly, a little bit more aggressive in the direction that they're going. Okay, so we're going to start out here with our faction leaders. You see that we have two, as all the faction groups have, and you'll be able to choose which one you want to use for any given game. The basic unit cost is it's going to affect that basic units pile of 10 cards, that go-to pile that's always there available to purchase. And that's going to vary between the two faction leaders. So although you're playing the same faction, you're going to be paying a different cost for basic units. This is Constable Venner Crow. His basic unit cost is 4. The average is about 3. That's kind of baseline. When you capture an opponent's unit, you may return a unit you played this phase to your hand. Okay, so when you make a capture, one of the guys who helped you make that capture is going to come back to your hand and he can do something else that turn. Constable Crow is the chief peacekeeper in Canton Fields, arbitrating daily disputes and coordinating militias in times of hardship. Okay. Now, we were talking about formations briefly in the previous set of videos, and we mentioned that they might be a tactics card that would be used during assaults. Well, we've made the switch to making this an effect on the faction leader card. Okay, so this is going to apply to all assaults when you're using this faction leader. And his assault formation is the ram horn. Okay, and here you could see I just made a graphical representation as best I could with the keyboard of what this assault formation looks like. There'll be a little image on the final card that, you know, depicts this formation, maybe on a little map or something like that. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what the capabilities of my, you know, my graphic design skills are in terms of what I can come up with for this. But these formations are going to come into play at the very end of the assault. After you've played all your cards and you're determining the total assault power, that's when this is going to happen. The attackers formation is going to come into play first, and then the defenders. Okay, and it's going to change some of the outcomes. Now you can see here you may discard the first cards of both your calm and cunning ranks to discard the first cards of your opponent's calm and cunning ranks. And that's because, as you see here, the ram horn formation is just the two groups smashing into each other, bashing head to head against each other. And so the first cards, if you remember what we looked at in the last video of how these cards are going to be laid out, that first card you played upon which the others were layered, that's the first card. It's going down for the for cunning. At least as of right now, I'm not sure how I'm going to situate that. But in the image that we showed, they're going down for cunning, and they're going to the right for combat. Okay, so that first card that you put down, that's what this formation is affecting. So you can discard the first card in both your ranks to discard the first card in both your opponent's ranks. Now you, of course, are going to be taking this into consideration when you put down that first card. They may or may not be, depending on whether they're familiar with your assault formation ability. But even so, you may be able to, work this to your advantage. And you may, okay? So it's going to be optional at the time, so you can see if it's to your advantage or not at the end of the assault. Okay, so dark short hair, thick black handlebar mustache with very short beard, heavy stubble, keen light brown eyes. That's Constable Crow. Now we have Vanica of Stendon. Her basic unit cost is 3, a little bit lower, and that's because Vanica, born a vagrant of Doonesboro, rose to prominence via keen perception and an ability to inspire. A freedom fighter at heart, she is the driving force behind Stendon's brave militia. Now, we said that Stendon has the foremost militia in Canton Fields, and Vanica is the driving force behind them. She has the ability to inspire, and so that's why her basic unit cost is a little bit less. People more readily join to her cause. Okay, whenever you recruit one or more basic units during your turn, you may destroy a card in your hand or discard pile. Okay, so giving you the opportunity to thin your deck, to refine your deck, keeping only the strong cards, and it's going to happen when you recruit basic units. So what you're doing is you're kind of streamlining that militia. You see, those basic units, we're kind of equating that with a militia, and we're streamlining the deck to make them more effective. Okay. Her assault formation is the Scorpion Sting. It's described this way: the Scorpion Sting formation ensnares the opposition on the front line, then penetrates with a piercing charge from the rearmost ranks. Okay, and here you see this on the sides, these little brackets would be, ensnaring the opposition, and then this vertical, this charge from behind of the rearmost ranks. Any militia or basic unit that is last in your comm or cunning ranks gains +1 comm and +1 cunning. So the last card you played this time, these are dealing with first cards, these are dealing with last cards. If you play a militia or basic unit, now militia is not a type of unit, it's the name of a particular card, and so there are militia cards in this deck that would be able to be used for this ability. Or, of course, basic units. If they're last, they're going to gain +1 comm and +1 cunning, and so it doesn't matter which side they're on. So you'd like to get a militia or a basic at the end of both of your ranks to get that +1 to the total assault power, because you'd have it matched on both sides. Okay, so that's Vanica's ability. Okay, so now let's head into the equipment. First we have the Amulet of Echoes, which is the Canton Fields Brigade artifact. Remember, they're only going to have one. Each faction group is going to have one, and then the faction as a whole is going to have another one. But each group is only going to have one, and theirs is the Amulet of Echoes. Now, this piece of equipment helped me to develop a lot of lore, which is going to be important going forward. Not only, it's not only for this game, but even going far off into the future, into the modern era. If you remember when we looked at our lore book, we had all of those eras. Let me see, where's the lore book? So here you see we're in the Great War era with the Orctide, and even coming all the way down to the modern era, there's going to be implications for this amulet. Okay, so let's see what it says here. Granted to Nathan of Croy, subsequent to his ascendancy to power, it was professed to secure the rule of his progeny. All right, so this was granted to him by the dwarves. We will see the lore book entry here for the amulet. Subsequent to the success of the monolithic cord, Nathan of Croy was crowned sovereign master over both Dawn and Canton Fields. Upon his ascendancy, the dwarf herald Pazizo of Osaya Lux presented Nathan with the Amulet of Echoes, which was promised to assure Nathan's lineage and legacy for all time. Okay, so if you remember the things that we talked about in episode 9 of this series, when we were looking at the lore book and the monolithic cord and everything that happened there, Nathan of Croy, the one and only sovereign ruler of men, which means that this amulet seemingly failed to secure the rule of his progeny. But that's going to kind of come back to haunt us a little bit later on. Okay, so the Amulet of Echoes is notorious if an opponent purchases the card to gain 1 influence, as all artifacts are. It's an artifact, which means that it gets captured instead of destroyed, even though it's a piece of equipment. It's 7, which isn't that high. It's pretty much on the low end of artifact. There'll be anywhere from maybe 7 to 9, I believe. And this one, choose a card you've played this phase, you may play that card again. Okay, so I really like this ability. It gives you a lot of versatility. It scales with the game. As you get better cards, this becomes more powerful. And so the Amulet of Echoes, right? So echoing that card once again. And the VP3, as all artifacts have. Okay, so they're getting 2 because they're at a 7, 8, or 9. And then they're getting a bonus 1 for being an artifact. Okay, just making them a special part of the game. All right, now another piece of equipment, not an attachment. The Skewer Trap, low cost, 2. There's 3 of them in the deck. Place this card on top of the opposing faction deck face up. The next time a unit is drawn from the deck, destroy it along with this card. Okay, so it's a trap that's going to be sitting under the ground. During their turn, any player may destroy an evade card in their hand to destroy this card. Cards are drawn from beneath this card as usual, and multiple copies of this card may be placed. Only the top card is active. Okay, meaning that this is going to go on top of the faction deck face up. You still can draw cards from beneath it as you usually would. Once a unit comes out, it's going to destroy that unit and itself. Okay, but during the opponent's turn, if this doesn't happen immediately, they're going to have the opportunity to destroy an evade card in their hand to destroy this card. Okay, so that's going to be a way that they can kind of, attempt to disarm this trap, although they are going to lose an evade card. I really hope it works, but I'd rather not be looking when it happens. And that's the Zealous Recruit. Okay, you see it's VP1, and it's a point sticking out of a small hole in the ground with rope running out of the hole to either side. A group of orcs is walking down the path toward it. So just this little point sticking out from the leaves, and when they walk over it, it's going to come springing up and skewer one of these orcs. Okay, now let's take a look at the Covert Apparel. It's an armor attachment. It's 5 cunning. There's going to be 2 of these in the deck, and the attached unit gains +2 combat and +2 cunning because it's covert apparel. So that's going to contribute to your ability to maybe sneak around and gain some advantage that's not specifically combat related, but it is going to help you combat as well because you can't be seen by the enemy. Okay, it also has an evade ability. It's covert, so that helps you evade an attack, and it helps you evade an attrition attack. And remember what we said with the evade cards. You could discard now with the revised rules. You can discard any evade card from your hand to avoid a strike. Okay? But if you match it up, if it's an attrition strike and you use this evade card, you're going to be able to draw a card. Okay, so you're going to discard this card, but you're going to get to draw a card. If it's not an attrition strike, if it's a destruction strike or a sabotage strike, then you're going to discard this card and you're not going to get anything. Okay? Remain crouched and motionless, and you'll be nigh unto imperceptible. Kesslin will begin the exercises at the foot of the ridge. Hold on a moment. Where do you go? That's Bertram Moore, the battlefield strategist, and the implication, obviously, is that Kesslin is wearing the covert apparel and Bertram can't see him. Okay? Alright, and that's a VP1. Okay. So now we'll look at a melee weapon attachment. There's going to be 4 of these, and there's a reason for that. Created via a rare collaboration between the Elves of Powderwood and Dawn's Crest, a quaternary set of these wondrous weapons were gifted to the men of Bankston during the Restitution era. They can both sense and shatter the will. Okay, and you see the attached unit gains +3 combat and +3 cunning. Okay, so you see how their equipment is balanced, is helping you balance as well. So again, the men being a balanced faction. All right, and the reason why it's giving you combat and cunning, it's a pole star, so it's a mace basically, and so that's going to give you combat advantage. but it also has like a jewel in the center. See, flat, six-pointed star-shaped mace with a large translucent gem at the center, and through that gem you can sense the will of someone else, and so that gives you cunning. That gives you the ability to kind of have an advantage in negotiations, let's say, be it recruit or otherwise. Okay, so that's the pole star, and there's 4 of them because there was a quaternary set. All right, and it's got a very high cost, especially for a card that's appearing so often. And the VP2, that's fairly unusual. But this is almost an artifact. It's just that we didn't want to have too many artifacts in the game. But this is like a special item, and so that's why it has this high cost. And we'll see if these costs are even reasonable when we get this thing to the table. Because again, I mean, 7 doesn't seem like much, but when you're running, two different resources in the game, we'll see how these things come up. But you see, I mean, here the attached unit gains +3 combat and +3 cunning. There's cards like this in the deck, so I mean, this unit might have 2 cunning of its own, and now it just got 3 more. So we're approaching that 7 pretty quick just with 2 cards. So I think it's going to be okay, but we're going to see that pretty soon. Okay, so now let's get into the tactics of the men. The daring rescue. All right. You may choose a card on an opponent's captured pile, pay its cost to return it to the active field, then destroy this card. Alright, so you're only going to have one-time use on this Daring Rescue, but there are 3 of them potentially available during the game. Okay, and then with tactics, we're always going to make the tactics defense a little bit higher than the cost. As we said previously, it's easier for this group to use their tactics than it is for you to circumvent them, because this is their way of doing things. This is how they operate and what they're used to doing. They're trained in doing these rescues, let's say. And it also has an evade ability, because see, you may choose a card on an opponent's captured pile. Well, maybe the opponent doesn't have a captured pile. Maybe they didn't capture anybody yet. Maybe there's nobody in there that you want. Maybe you can't pay the cost of anything that's in there. They're too high. And so then you wouldn't have much going on with this. Although it does have the +1 combat and +1 cunning, because a rescue does potentially require both. So it's giving you that little bit of something. But it also has this evade ability. And if it's a destruction attack that you evade, then you're going to draw a card, and if it's a unit, return this card to your hand. Okay, so you see the rescue kind of idea coming into this. You're going to draw a card. If it's a unit that you recovered, right, then you're going to return this card to your hand. In other words, it was like a successful attempt. Okay, so you're going to get this card back, and then you can use it for its combat and cunning, or use it to further rescue. Because see, this got a unit, and nothing stopped it from happening, so you're going to continue to try and rescue people. You see, so it's it's a little bit loose in terms of these thematic threads, but it's this idea of bringing units to you. You see, wherever they're coming from. I will lie cold and breathless before resigning myself to the notion of our brethren bleeding under an orc lash. That's Calgrim the Bindbreaker, right? Very appropriate, considering that he is the Bindbreaker, and he's on the Daring Rescue tactic card. Alright, so we said these tactics we're going to have a 3-3-4 setup. So you see there's 3 Daring Rescues, 3 double back. Alright, this one is a little bit cheaper, 3 cunning. You may choose up to 2 units from your discard pile and shuffle them into your deck. If there are no units in your discard pile, place this card on top of your deck at the end of your action phase. So you would get to use it for its cunning, and then put it back on top of your deck if it wasn't successful the first time on this ability. So you're choosing 2 units from your discard pile, putting them into your deck, doubling back. So coming back again from the discard pile into the deck, but it's also double back, so you're getting 2. You see? So kind of tying this all up. And then, again, if there are no units, place this card on top of your deck again. So this card is doubling back. If it doesn't work out, it's going to go back on top of your deck. And it has a strike ability, a destruction strike. Choose a unit in your discard pile. If its comm value is higher than the comm value of an opposing unit in the active field, destroy the opposing unit. Okay? So you're going to make a destruction strike against the enemy. All right? If they don't evade this, this is what's going to happen. You're going to choose a unit in your discard pile, and if it's stronger than a unit in the active field, it's going to destroy that unit. Now, the way we're doing this, like we said, is that it's going to be an either-or proposition. So you're not going to get all of this. You're going to get this strike ability, or you're going to get the cunning and this ability. Okay, it's one or the other. All right. The horde appears to be thinning ahead. We've scouted far enough. We could do more good back in town. All right, so double back. And the last one is resilience. Now, resilience has the highest count at 4. Because it's resilience, it's hanging with them, it's staying in there, it's reappearing over and over again. It gives you 1 combat because it's being resilient in battle. Choose a unit you played this turn. If it is still in play at the end of your action phase, you may place it on top of your deck. Okay, so that's staying in the fight kind of idea. And this is Wyvern. We didn't see her previously, but we're going to be looking at her when we get to the captains of the Canton Fields Brigade. Don't take my sweated limbs to mean I'm ready for the tent. As long as these dogs have a bark left in their throat, I will be there to cut it out. Okay, so she's a fierce warrior. You know, you could imagine maybe like, what's her name? Brienne of Tarth in Game of Thrones? Karth? I forget. You know, I have trouble with the names in that show. I've been watching it for like 7 years or whatever. I never read the books, so, you know. But, yeah, you could imagine her if she was actually exciting. You know, she's strong, she's big, she's, you know, she looks different than that, but she's a very powerful, formidable warrior, but she's also a lot fiercer and, you know, than that character is. Okay, so that's resilience. She's hanging in there, all right? Just because, you know, she's sweating and she's out there doesn't mean that she's ready to go home, all right? And now let's get into the units. The basic units, we looked at these in the previous videos. So we have the Athletic Champion with the Assault ability. If this is currently the last unit in either rank, it cannot be destroyed. Catch me if you can, the Athletic Champion. Okay, that's a quote from my daughter. The Athletic Champions are all females, as we previously described. That sports are generally played by females in Redimere. And so she's gonna have 2 combat and 1 cunning. But you see how we're working these assault abilities. If this is currently the last unit in either rank, it cannot be destroyed. Because remember we said, you know, we're only really going to be able to use abilities on the card that we can see, which is going to be the last one that we played because it's overlaying the other cards. Alright, so if this is currently the last one, it can't be destroyed by an opponent's assault abilities, presumably. Alright, and so this may be the last one at the end of the entire assault, or this may just be the last one at the time, and then they go to, you know, that would change what they're going to do. If they were going to play a card that's going to destroy one of your units, it's not going to be able to destroy this one, unless it can destroy any unit later on. If this is not the last unit, then it's going to become vulnerable. Okay, and now we have the Augurer of Omens, +2 cunning, no combat, and it has a strike. It's a sabotage strike. Reveal the top card of the opposing faction deck. You may pay its defense to purchase it. Alright, we've spoken about this previously. It's giving you an opportunity to gain access to a card that you normally wouldn't have access to yet. And you're going to get first crack at it before it actually comes into the active field by revealing it off the top of the faction deck. You may pay its defense to purchase it. So this could be a unit which you would capture. This could be a piece of equipment or a tactic that you would be, you know, having access to. And the Augurer of Omens, he's predicting the future and giving you the ability to do something about it. Let's just say I wouldn't make any plans for tomorrow night. Okay? Alright, so VP1 on the Augurer. Okay. And the Zealous Recruit. Now, we went back and forth on this in the previous videos. I had kind of settled on Zealous Squire at one point because I thought it, you know, was a little funny. But I didn't like the word Squire. It really has a very medieval connotation. You know, there's no knights in this game or anything like that. I don't prefer for my fantasy to have a strong medieval aspect. You know, like, you know, knights jousting with feathers on their helmets and, you know, crests, you know, and this and that. Like, that's not really the kind of fantasy that I prefer. So that word squire just seemed a little bit out of place. And so, you know, we decided to go with the Zealous Recruit. It really makes more sense. There aren't really any squires here. This isn't a kingdom, Canton Fields, you know what I'm saying? And so the recruit, this makes sense because we're going to be recruiting this unit, and when we recruit this unit, you may place it into your hand instead of your discard pile. Okay, so we've spoken about this previously. It's going to come into your hand immediately because it's zealous, and it's a recruit. So in a sense, it's a zealous recruit, as in the person is a recruit who's zealous. It's also a zealous recruit as an action. You know, this is like a zealous act of recruiting. You're going to get the card immediately and put it into your hand. And we have a quote from Vanica of Stendon. "The coward risks his freedom by trusting it to another, and by the gleam in your eyes I know there are no cowards here." Okay, so a little bit of that inspirational touch from Vanica of Stendon as she's mustering the militia. Okay, and that helps them be a little bit more zealous, right? All right, so now we get into the faction deck units. These are the prime units of the, faction group. So we have the Captain's Aid. It has +1 combat, +1 cunning. Relatively cheap. There's 3 of them in the deck. It can be used to fortify and has the following ability. You may destroy this card to use the activate ability of one of your faction's captains without spending an influence token. All right, typically captains' activate abilities will cost 1 influence. Okay, and so they can be activated anytime during your turn, but you got to have an influence token in order to use them. With the Captain's Aid, you're going to be able to gain access to that ability without spending the influence token. All right. In addition, it has an assault ability if you want to use this during an assault. If any of your faction's captains are in the battlefield, you may acquire a basic unit and place it into your hand. Okay, so it's going to be supporting, the captains are out there fighting, and the Captain's Aid is going to help by mustering the other units. Okay, so you're going to get a basic unit and place it into your hand during an assault, granting you an extra card during an assault, which is very important, and not just any card, but a unit, which is going to be useful during an assault. Okay. We look to your strength and leadership to carry us through these dark times, but you need not bear this burden alone. That's the Captain's Aid. He's not the foremost guy out there, but he's going to help bear that burden. All right. Brazen young man, sword drawn, back to back with wyvern, enemies surround. Okay. All right. So now we go to the Guardian of the Front Line. We've spoken about them. Now we're going to see there's 5 of them now. Okay, so they're the most prolific unit in this faction group. All right, they're at a cost of 5. That's in the middle of the range. They give you 2 combat and 1 cunning. That's pretty solid. They can fortify, which is good. And they have an evade that has 2 abilities. All right, so if you use this card to evade, if it's an attrition, you're going to return this card to your hand. And if it's a destruction, you're going to destroy this card. All right, so this was set up a little bit differently previously, but the idea is still there that the Guardian of the Front Line is going to get to interrupt a destruction by sacrificing himself. Okay, but if it's attrition, then you're just going to return this card to your hand, and you're going to get to use it for its combat and cunning. Okay, they have come to our doorstep calling for war, and we will answer, no matter the cost. That's Marshall Adam. Okay, so they've come here to fight. We're going to go get them, and hey, we gotta make the ultimate sacrifice. That's what we gotta do. Okay, it's the Guardian in the Front Line. Hyla Crawthorn, the merchant. I'll make it worth your while. Okay, whenever you purchase a card from your faction's row this phase, you may pay an additional 2 cunning to place it into your hand instead of your discard pile. So by paying 2 cunning, you're going to kind of get that zealous recruit ability, where it's going to come into your hand immediately. But this is a card from the active field, not a basic unit. All right, and that could even be a piece of equipment, let's say, or a tactic. Any card from the active field. You just pay an additional 2 cunning to get immediate access to it. All right, so he's making it worth your while. He's kind of like a trader. All right, not a traitor, but a trader. All right, so he trades in different things, and he's a negotiator and a wheeler dealer kind of guy. Okay, brash young, longish, dirty blonde hair on top, short on sides, thin light goatee, and a sparse beard. Okay. All right. Oh yeah, here we go. Broker barterer. All right, and now the interceptor of the onslaught. Oh, you know what? We forgot to note that Hyla Crawthorn is notorious. Okay, he is he is that single unit for the men faction. So we want to drop that in here to make sure that we note that if the opponent purchases this card, they gain 1 influence, because he's only 1 copy of Hyla. Okay, so the Interceptor of the Onslaught, 1 combat, 1 cunning, can be used to fortify and has a strike ability, Sabotage. Reveal the top card of an opponent's basic units pile. You may pay its defense to capture it. Okay, so it's an Interceptor of the Onslaught. It's going to be able to get into that basic unit pile and capture cards directly from there before they even get out onto the field or into somebody's hand or whatever it is. Okay. Alright, and that's VP1. Okay, and now finally we have the Stendon Militia. Now there's only 2 of them here. Alright, they cost 6, but they're 2 combat and 2 cunning. And they have an assault ability, so they can fortify as well. This is a unit that would be very, very useful during assault, because they're balanced and they have an assault ability. If this is the last card in either rank at the end of the assault, this unit contributes both its calm and cunning when determining total assault power. And since they're matched, it's just going to give you a straight 2 right onto your total assault power. Okay, and you remember how this would combo with Vanika's ability here, which says any militia or basic unit that is last in your calm or cunning ranks gains +1 combat and +1 cunning. All right, so if you had this militia unit in the assault at the end of one of your ranks, it's going to get +1 to both of these, which means it's going to be +3 and +3, and then it's going to contribute both to the total assault power, giving you a bump of 3 to that total assault power as opposed to 2. All right, but there's only 2 of them, so they're going to be a little bit hard to come by. Okay. The militia at Stendon is highly trained and fiercely courageous. They stand as firm defenders of their own town and the lowland farms. All right, this ties into what we were talking about when we spoke on the locations and how Stendon is one of the areas that supports the lowland farms and protects it. Okay. All right. And now we're into the captains. So I made a note here of the total defense of the captains just to make sure that these were relatively balanced among the faction groups. A lot of this stuff, when I was going through it, was pretty close already, just off intuition as I numbered all this stuff going along. When I went to add it up, a lot of it was where I wanted it to be. The men's faction was pretty balanced. The Blood Orcs were pretty combat heavy. A little bit too much, so I had to back it off a little. But, it was surprising to see how close I had come to what I wanted just intuitively. It reminds me of something that a math teacher of mine said in 6th grade. His name was Mr. Krokel. And he was a very, very unique individual, very, very interesting guy. And he once just said something off the cuff, about when we were using rulers and things like that. He said, "Don't be afraid to measure with your eye. You'll be surprised how accurate it can be." And so I thought of that in this, where I said, just kind of going with my own instincts here, I was able to kind of get the measurements close to where I wanted it to be. All right, so the total defense is 60 for all their captains. And so the first one is Bertram Moore. You remember the battlefield strategist. His defense is 10 combat. All the captains are going to be notorious. So whenever you capture a captain, you're going to gain 1 influence. It's a rival effect, which it's going to do as soon as it's revealed from the deck and placed into the battlefield. It's going to have this effect immediately, no matter whose turn it is. Each opponent discards a card with the highest comm value in their hand. Okay, so whatever that may be. It might be a +4 combat unit. It might be a might card for +1. Okay, but it's going to discard whatever the highest value card is. Now you see it says each opponent discards a card with the highest comm value, not the card, because again, there might be more than one that match. There might be 2 of them that are +3 combat. So then the opponent would get to choose which one it wants to discard. All right, now when this is out in the battlefield, each turn, remember at the beginning of the action phase, the captain turn abilities are going to be available before you get to play cards. So this is going to happen at the beginning of your action phase while you still have a full hand. It's reveal a unit from your hand. This unit contributes both its calm and cunning this phase. Okay, so giving you that versatility and that balance again of the men faction to balance combat and cunning. All right, and then its activate ability. You can pay 1 influence at any time during your action phase to choose a unit you played this phase. You may play that unit again. All right, so getting that Amulet of Echoes ability on a unit for 1 influence. We remember that Bertram Moore is an unsung hero of the Orctide. His insightful strategies on the battlefield are universally recognized by his colleagues. All right. And so the 10 combat value, combat defense, is going to make him a 5 VP captain. Okay, so we had figured this out where I think we said 10, 11, 12 would give you 5, 13, 14 would give you 6, and 15 and above would give you 7 on the VP. Calgrim the Bindbreaker, we remember him, 14. Okay, he's got a 14 combat defense, so you can see 4 higher than Bertram Moore. He's a very strong warrior. Remember we said he's something like Conan. When he arrives, you may choose 1 unit from any opponent's captured pile and place it into the active field. We're going to say the, because what we decided to do is we're not going to have captured piles distinct in a team game. It's going to be for the faction. So both teammates are going to share a captured pile. Whoever we capture, we're bringing them to the same prison camp, right? We don't have our own separate prison camps, and there would be no need for it. There's no reason why we need to have that information be separate. There's no place in the game where it would serve any purpose. So why have a separate deck cluttering up the play space? So instead of any units, any players, captured pile is just going to be the opponents in general. All right. So he can rescue a unit from the captured pile and put it into the active field. Now that's pretty strong. You're not paying anything, okay? But it's only going to happen once because it's his arrival effect. All right. And on a turn, you may randomly discard 2 cards to recruit any unit in the active field without paying its cost. All right. So on a turn, you can discard 2 cards to get a unit for free. Oh, excuse me. All right. So just by discarding any 2 cards, you can recruit a unit in the active field. So that can be pretty powerful. I mean, you could discard a Might and Guile card and get, you know, a card would cost 7 in the active field. All right, Calgrim the Bindbreaker, again, bringing people into the fold. His activate ability, place 1 unit from your discard pile into your hand. All right, so again, bringing units to you. He's the Bindbreaker. He's getting captured people. He's bringing people back into the fold. All right, and we looked at him a lot in the previous series about his story and everything like that. And now we go to Keslan Deslo. All right, he's kind of like a ranger. Okay, his true motives are anyone's guess, but he always seems to show up where he's needed most. That's from Constable Crow. All right, so he's kind of like a wandering guy. He has no specific allegiance. He's kind of out there on his own, but he's always there to help. All right, and he's got 11, so he's kind of in the middle of the range on his defense. His arrival effect, choose a unit in your opponent's row of the active field. You may place that unit in your captured pile. So he can just kind of sneak up, cover the guy's mouth, and drag him away. You know, that's kind of the idea here. You can sneak up on a unit in the active field and capture it for free. Again, it's only going to happen once. On his turn, on your turn, he's going to, let's see, choose a unit in your opponent's row. That unit's defense is reduced by 2 this phase. See, now you said a lot of times we said you may, you know, making these things something you may or may not do. But this doesn't matter because you could choose a unit in the opponent's row. That unit's defense is reduced by 2. You don't have to use that. You know, his defense is reduced by 2. You do what you want with that. Capture him, don't, whatever. There's no reason to make this optional. It doesn't matter if you just want to ignore it. So, and remember, these turn abilities are going to happen in a team game on the turn of both players of the faction. So every time a player of your faction has a turn, this is going to come into play. So while Keslan is out, it's going to you know, make it a lot easier to capture people. As we saw his arrival ability, he captured someone. All right, so there's this kind of theme going on. And then his activate ability, if your faction has a marching token on a location, you may randomly destroy 1 unit fortifying that location. So remember that fortifying units will be face down. You could just pick one at random and destroy it. So again, like we did here, sneaking up as we're going for the assault, he sneaks in first. Jumps down, you know, I kind of picture like Shadow of Mordor, you know, crawling along the top of the wall and then just jumping down on a guy and taking him out. That's what he's going to do during, you know, previous to an assault. Okay, so you could activate this at will if you have an influence token, and you can you can do this if you're marching on that location. He goes a little bit ahead and takes out one of those fortifying units just at the right time. All right. Now this is going to happen during the action phase. Your marching token may be on the one side, which means the assault is going to resolve this turn when you do this. The opponent's not going to have a chance to replace that fortifying unit. All right. So this could be very powerful. All right. This is not accurate. I must have copied and pasted. Sometimes I'll just like grab a previous captain, copy it, and then change everything. All right. So this he's just dark-haired ranger. We can get into it more at another time. All right. Marshal Adam is like the main commander of the Canton Fields Brigade. He's got 12 combat. His arrival effect: if there is a location in the active field, take control of it without paying its cost. Otherwise, each player of your faction may draw up to 3 cards. Okay, so I think this is how it was previously. All right, he's going to give you the option to grab a location without having to pay its cost, but that may not come up. There's only 4 locations in the game, so you know it's going to be rare that this would happen. So if it doesn't happen, he'll allow each player of your faction to draw 3 cards, you know, again, making everybody stronger. On your turn, you may reveal the top card of your faction deck. If it's a unit, you may use it to immediately fortify a location under your faction's control. Otherwise, place it into the active field. All right? So if you reveal a unit from the top of your faction deck, you can bring it out to fortify, again, this idea of locations. But if it's not a unit, or you choose not to immediately fortify a location, maybe because you've already filled all the fortification slots in your locations, then you can place it into the active field. So it just gives you one more option during your turn. Because remember, the turn abilities are happening at the beginning of your action phase before you purchase cards. So this would give you one more option. All right. So Marshal Adam, as the like main commander, he's kind of, you know, making everything better. Okay. And then you could just activate this ability to get +3 calm and or cunning. All right. Now, in this case, you can get both. So remember, there's like this ethereal pool of resources during your action phase. As you play cards, you build up combat and cunning. You can get 3 now in any combination. So if you want 1 combat, 2 cunning, you can do that. The chief commander of Canton Fields Fighting Forces, Marshal Adam, honed his talents far afield in the uncharted Southlands. Okay, so we've been talking about the orcs in the far west, Canton Fields in the middle region, and Dawn in the east. We haven't gotten into the southern regions. Southern regions are a little bit more wild. All right, and he was out there for a time. All right, so now here we have Wyvern, the final captain, 13, pretty strong, only second to Calgrim. Her arrival ability: destroy all units in the opposing faction's row. Okay, of the active field. You know, we really don't need this. I mean, row could just be row, you know. I mean, so we know that it's the row of the active field. And a lot of this stuff is going to have to get trimmed back, particularly a lot of this flavor text probably. We're going to have to see what we could fit on a card. Okay, but, you know, so if we have to clip these kind of things down and just make it row, it'll be clear enough. Then we can note it in the rule book that when we say row, we're talking about the row of the active field. But for now, I like to be clear and just say that. So destroys all units. I mean, she's a beast, you know. And let's take a look at what she looks like. A large, attractive, but formidable, light-skinned blonde woman with armor that reveals musculature. A Serpentor-style dragon helm. If you remember Serpentor from G.I. Joe, the real American hero, it was like a snake head, and the face was appearing through the mouth. So this is going to be that kind of a thing. And a two-handed greatsword with a winged hilt, and that has a diamond shape on its end, kind of reflecting the wyvern's tail. Okay, and so it'll be a dragon helm, like where she's appearing through the mouth, all in gold. You know, it's look a little bit like She-Ra or something like that, but more heavily armored, maybe. You know, and then of course, like with this head helm thing. Okay, so she's very formidable. She comes out and she destroys all units in the opposing faction's row. All right. On the turn, opposing captains have their defense reduced by 1 this phase. So if you're trying to capture opposing captains, she's going to help you do that. And you can activate to gain +5 combat. All right. Now here he gave you calm and or cunning and only had the 3 because of the versatility. She's only combat, but she's giving you 5. Okay, and that could definitely help you. Between these two things, reducing the defense of captains by 1 and then gaining +5 combat, you're going to have a good shot at making a capture on a captain with Wyvern out there. Okay. A grave and solitary warrior, Wyvern's origins and adventures are kept close to her chest, though she is often seen arriving and departing through the northern sea gate. So she's been out adventuring in wild lands, Antogea and beyond. Nobody really knows what she's up to. She doesn't speak much. You know, she's all about fighting. She's focused. All right, it's, you know, she's not one for like hanging around, palling around, and laughing. She's up to something, we don't know what. She comes in, she does what she does, and then when she leaves, nobody knows where she goes. All right, so you could just, I kind of picture her like, you know, like Mage Knight, the board game. You know, she's just out there alone, just adventuring in really dangerous, adventurous circumstances by herself. Okay. All right, and now that's going to do it for the Canton Fields Brigade. Next up, we're going to be looking at the dwarves. So you can see how the men's faction is trying to achieve balance. It's trying to kind of bring units back into the fold. You know, by getting them out of the captured pile, by bringing them out of, you know, your discard pile, things like that. And you know how they're kind of a versatile faction group. Okay. All right. So thanks for checking in. We'll be back soon with the Dwarves of Osaya Lux.